Board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And today, in a minute, we'll see another person upon the screen. This person will come along, and you know them as Calvin Wong Tze Loon. Board games and editing, it's what we're talking about. Board games and editing, I'm not going to shout. Hey, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Xate, hello. I have totally seen, if you saw my Twitter, I did actually see Calvin about 3 minutes ago, but I think that, yeah, they didn't want to be in screen. There was a miscommunication anyway. So I don't know how much look. They're going to be back in about 2 or 3 minutes. Fingers crossed. It's all be good. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about myself. I am Bez. It is bedtime in some countries, and we are blethering about board games. As always, it is the Bezzy Bedtime Board Game Blether, and this is the 60th episode of the Bezzy Bedtime Board Game Blether, or the 160th since, daily stream. Today we're going to be talking about editing, writing with Calvin Wong Tze Loon, who's going to be popping along relatively soon. And let's start off. Oh, hello, Jim. It's lovely to see you there. So if you want to join in the full discussion, then go to twitch.tv/stuffbybez, where there's other people watching as well, or you can just watch, and that's totally cool. Whatever works for you. Basically, Twitch is where most of the discussion is. But either way, it's lovely to see you. Yeah. Let me start off with a brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant? Yeah, I'm not going to keep this pose for very long, given that, there's no one else here to entertain you whilst I pretend to be frozen. One of these days, I'm just going to put a black thing on the screen, and then do that. Then you'll be like, oh, has Bez cut out? Or maybe you won't, because I've just told you that I'm going to do that. I really should stop speaking sometimes. And anyway, what is a brilliant thing? Ideas. I don't think we've ever really had a proper chat about ideas. Just whether it's looking around and thinking, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to eat? Okay, here's an idea for what I can eat. Or, what am I going to play? Okay, here's an idea. And ideas can be offered from so many different places. You can get ideas from, in the words where you see birds and you think, okay, I'm going to make another game about crows, and maybe this game wasn't what I thought it would be, and so I'm going to make a totally different game based on what I thought that game would be. You can get ideas from everything around you. It's just about that inspiration, whether it's things that give you purpose, that keep you moving. I mean, it's all about the ideas. It's all about the things in your... Do you know what I mean? Like, I hope this is making some sort of sense. I don't feel... Yeah. I feel like hopefully we can all agree that ideas are indeed a brilliant thing. But let me move on to recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Recent highlights. So, recent highlights for me included doing lots of packing of stuff and going to the post office, and just, on the way there, I had the wind with me, and that was so much fun. And then on the way back, I was pedaling against the wind, which was slightly less fun. But, I had a sense of achievement, so it was all good. Obviously, wearing my mask when I went in, sent off 5 things. I feel like just that sense of achievements. I got a wee bit of drawing done of letters, just a tiny bit. I might have shown it yesterday. Oh, maybe I should have just brought the bits of paper. Oh, I do have something to show, kind of. So yeah, we put up, I don't know if you can see that too well. So there's the new letters without shading, and then I was like, yeah, this just needs shading. It looks terrible anyway. And it was more to check kind of the style of the letters. You know, how does this O shape look? How does the R shape look? And how does this E and I look? You know, just comparing them to the whole thing. And I'm starting to get to a point where I'm happy with these letters, and we will keep working on them. That is a thing that I did yesterday. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much, Jim. I really, genuinely, massively appreciate it. And just to talk a bit more about my recent highlights about games played and whatnot. So if we look at allow, there we go. So more recent highlights. Drawing, more drawing. This was early in the morning, and that's not the best photo, but yeah, that's the new letters that I drew. Let me know what you think. That's with a bit of shading added. That ampersand was just for the Bears and Friends game day that's coming up on the 17th. I ate some rock. This is like a fish with a big spine in it, and then such a strong taste. It's sweet. I hope that vegetarians aren't, I feel slightly guilty about sometimes, showing the stuff of dead animals, but I don't know. I decided yes, at least today, to show it. And played a bit of Ticket to Ride London. I managed to win quite handily. We also played one of the L games that are going to be shown. Well, one of the L games that managed to make it to the final 9. I'm not going to say which one, but myself, Layla, and James, we played it twice, and we're like, yeah, Chris and McCall, yeah, we were a bit tired of this, but actually playing it with a new group, yeah, this is actually really fun. So well done to the person who I'm not going to name who named it. Oh, thank you very much, Jim. That's lovely of you to say. Anyway, so Ticket to Ride London and New York is where it's at, in my opinion. Now, for those who don't know, Jim is, just a shout out to Jim. Jim is a lovely person. Met them at Tabletop Gaming Live 2019, I want to say. I think that Jim and, wait, is your partner also called Layla? Anyway, so this was actually where I realized that, okay, started to have the seeds of maybe the prize pack is a little bit too much because people are really working to get that first place. So after Essen 2019, no, was it after? Yeah, it was after Essen 2019. Oh my God, it seems so long ago, doesn't it? Back in those heady days when, anyway, so after Essen 2019, I was like, okay, this one person just got super competitive. I'm going to give a bit more to second place, a bit less to first place. And yeah, I really enjoy running these competitions. It's kind of where it's at. It's just about letting people have fun with something you made. And sorry, it's Leola, which is almost but not quite the same as my neighbor's name. Anyway, so hope you have fun meeting, and feel free to tell me what are your recent highlights, only if you want to. Tell me what are your recent highlights, what are some fun things that you have done, have you eaten something tasty, have you had any good conversations? I had a lovely quick catch up with James. I mean, I've seen quite a lot of people outside. I mean, relatively, I've seen quite a few people this past week, I guess, and you might argue. I mean, obviously, I've seen housemates in some capacity, and I've seen Chris, McCall, and Layla, and then I've also seen 2 other people because, we talked about something on Sunday and something yesterday where James Naylor came over, and We play tested their game. It's a game that James wants to keep a little bit under wraps, but it's got a theme which has been done before and a mechanism that has been done before, but James is trying to fuse them together in a way that is a wee bit meatier and a wee bit unique, because that's what it's all about with a game. Even if the constituent parts have all been seen before then, it's all about the synthesis of something lovely, isn't it? Oh, and hi, Jay Foolsguard, lovely to see you. And apparently, Jim Osman says today they are having a meeting with their co-creator about a card game they're planning to make. Lovely. Well, I hope that you have a wonderful, productive meeting. Now, as we move into, as we wait for Colvin, I guess we'll talk about the questionably quick questions. So if you have any questionably quick questions for me, or if you want to kind of just throw in any chat that you want, let's just chat about whatever we want. I'm going to start off by asking myself the question, what is my favorite hexadecimal code? And currently, I think it's FF1122, which is the color that you see on the screen. And what is my favorite piece of cutlery? Oh, that's a good question, Bez. I think it's got to be the spoon, because if you compare, look, I think if something's soft enough, you can cut it with a spoon. I'm just saying, like, or you can hold it and just bite it with your, if it's like a steak, it's not the nicest thing to do. You want a knife and fork for sure, but you could always just pick it up and eat it. Anyway, so, and hello, Calvin. Lovely to have you.
Oh my God! Hi, I'm so sorry, everybody.
It's all good.
Okay, so this is what happened. All right. So I promised. Do you know this game, Tale of Merchants?
I'm not super familiar with it.
But you know of it, right? You know it exists.
Sure.
So the designer of Tale of Merchants is designing a new game, and he wanted me to come and help on it. And I said, oh, okay, I'm free on Monday because Sunday night I'm going to be shooting a short film, so Monday I'll be okay. But it turns out the short film rolled on to a second night of filming, and I slept through the whole day. So yeah, and then I finally called him, not realizing that today was Thursday. I thought it was Wednesday because I've been like so. The short film shot from like 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. So like, what even is time anymore?
That sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, it is. And the film, what I was doing in it is I was most of the filming process, I was in the back of a moving ambulance, trying to resuscitate like an old man, right? Because my character is a paramedic. So yeah, trying to shoot realistic looking CPR in a moving ambulance, speeding down the road for multiple takes because you need multiple angles. 2 nights in a row, yeah. Whew. But I'm happy I'm here. I'm sorry for being late, but I really didn't want to have to tell him again. I'm so sorry we have to cut this call because yesterday I was in the middle of a call with him and I got a call from my director saying, Calvin, we're about to miss the deadline. We need you to come in and re-record some audio. So I had to hang up on him yesterday. In the middle of.
So what I'm hearing is that it's a chaotic life for you right now.
Yeah, but
and
it's
presumably the current state of the world hasn't helped.
No, but it's chaotic in a good way because this is work, right? And it's creative work that I enjoy. So it's not chaotic in the sense that things are going wrong. Although having multiple crossed schedules is wrong. That's my fault entirely, and I'm sorry to have inflicted that upon you and your lovely viewers, but we're here.
It happens.
We're here. We're doing the editing.
We're here and we can get started. We are just... Oh, hello, Alex. It's lovely to have you. And got a lovely crowd. We're all waiting, apparently, to hear about airships. People wanted to hear if you had a favourite airship. Well, I think we were just filling time, to be honest. But do you have a favourite airship? And that will be the end of the questionably quick
The
question.
kind with balloons. You need a balloon, and you need cannons. You need lots of cannons. It's very important that airships have cannons on them. You need to have a big balloon on it. It needs to be long, like a pirate, like those old pirate sailing ships, right? And yeah, that's my favorite kind of airship. What is my favorite piece of cyberpunk culture? Netrunner. Netrunner.
Yeah, I mean, do you know Colvin? And we've got yay for cannons. Presumably, do you like kind of a piratey, steampunky airship?
Yeah.
Do you know that Dreamcast RPG? I don't know what it's called, where you're actually flying around in an airship. There's definitely an RPG on the Dreamcast.
I don't remember.
Oh, I just got it. Oh my god.
Is it Skies of Arcadia by any chance? Because I've just typed Dreamcast RPG airship into Google.
That sounds like it might be correct. But yeah, so unless anyone else has any questionably quick questions that they want to ask, let's move on and finish up with asking you what's been a typical day like for you in the past few weeks. It's been like you've done some filming, you've done some writing, you've been taking some calls. What's it all about?
Yeah, that really. And I've been helping Dee with her stream because she's trying to get into streaming. So whenever she's on stream, I moderate the chat. I try and engage people. I talk to her. I wrangle the cat if the cat is attempting to encroach upon the streaming location. Although whenever that happens, the chat gets to hear Kazrat meows, so people are usually quite happy about that. So my typical day recently has been I've been trying to wake up earlier, and it's been mostly working. I've got it to 12 p.m. now. Except today. Today I woke up at 4. I have no idea why. And yeah, so I've decided just to not be too harsh on myself about what time I wake up or what time I go to sleep and things like that, because it's just something that I can't control. And if I try to exert too much control over it or beat myself up over it, I feel really terrible. So yeah.
Oh, hello, Chris. Lovely to see you. Someone in the chat was wanting to know about the RPG, and I think it was indeed this one. But anyway, I do want to remind people to comment, ask questions, follow, and I see that you've got a link. Is this what we are potentially going to be looking at from the viewpoint of editing?
Yes. So I wanted to edit a rulebook live on air, but I didn't want to step on anyone's toes by saying their rulebook is terrible. So I decided to use an open source game, like Hearts. Everyone has heard of Hearts, right? So we can talk about how this rulebook works and how it is, whether it's any good, what we can do about it if it's not any good, and yeah.
That sounds exciting. So
Yes.
we're going to be discussing it line by line. We're going to be dissecting the writing of it and deciding what tweaks we can get into. Sorry, I'm just going to move you up there, Colvin.
I mean, yeah. So that's exactly what Chris like. I didn't want to use a hobby board game rulebook, like a real hobby board game rulebook, right? Because I don't think it's nice, even if the rulebook is terrible or it's acknowledged that it's terrible. I still don't feel comfortable doing it, right? Like even if the creator has said to my face, yeah, no, the rulebook was awful, we needed to work on it. So I decided to just grab this one and it's as close to an open source tabletop game as we've got, right? Like something like Hearts or Bridge, right?
Yeah. But I mean, still, the writing of the rules has been written by a human out there, and it's the writing which is, interestingly, the bit that's copyrightable. whereas the rules of the game are clearly not. Alex says, I feel like lots of people would jump at the chance to have you edit the rule books. Not sure my ego is up to it just yet, though. And, hello, Paul. Paul said to herself this morning, I really must concentrate on work. I need to skip Bez's show. And then they came on just because you're so dreamy, Calvin.
and Paul, we're doing your favorite topic, editing rules.
I mean, I know it's a thing that Paul does a lot of, but is that Paul's favorite thing to do? I mean, Paul does a lot.
I don't know. Actually.
I think that Paul, if I had to guess what Paul's favorite thing to do is, I would say, I would say actually playing the game with people.
No, it's ice cream.
Playing
the game while having an ice cream.
And Paul is editing the rule book right now. But what is your favorite thing to do, Paul? Is it eating ice cream or, yeah. So let's take a step back if we can. What is editing? Is it basically, okay, something is done by I mean, does it have to be a different person? I mean, you can edit your own stuff, right?
You could edit your own stuff. You should edit your own stuff. And in a way that, okay, let me take that back. You should edit your own stuff, but you should not be the person who has final say on edits. Ideally, if it's just for you, then that's fine. But if it's for a product or it's for something that's going out to people, there should be at least one more person. It can be your partner. It can be somebody a friend, somebody you trust. I mean, I understand that in a small indie company, you might not have the budget or money to hire an editor. Although I suggest highly that doing it is important because the rulebook is the single most important component of a game. And in terms of actually getting the game played. And what was I going to say? Yeah. So, but if it's just something small, like a tiny project that you're doing, or if you're not sure whether it's going to be published or not, or you're just putting together a prototype for the first time, just asking a friend that you trust or asking somebody who you're close to just have a quick look over the rules and see if there's anything that makes sense, anything that stands out to them. Definitely a great idea. What Paul said. I'm decent at editing my own stuff, but the reason I say that you should always get someone else to do it is because you have things in your head that you have made assumptions on that other people may not have. So, for example, if I said in my rule book, discard a card, in my head, because I designed the game, I know what that means. I know that it means I take the card from my hand and I put it in the discard pile, which is next to the draw pile. But I did not say that in the rules anywhere. I did not say in the.
If it's for a gamery game, discard a card, I think, is all the rules you need.
No, but to which pile? There's 3 discard piles.
Why are there 3 discard piles? What kind?
No, but you see what I'm saying, right? Like I forget to say discard this card to your own discard pile instead of.
Oh, every individual person has their own discard pile.
For example, yes.
Oh, I just assumed there was one central discard pile.
Yeah, you see, that's exactly it. You made an assumption that So because that's it, right? Like in a standard 52 card game like Hearts that we're about to do, there's 1 discard pile. But if we're playing Dominion, everyone has a discard pile, right?
We've got someone asking, because we did skip the kind of questionably quick questions, so let's just ask, can you introduce yourself in 1 minute? And you are in Malaysia, what time is it in Kuala Lumpur?
It is 5:24 p.m. in Malaysia, and I am Calvin. I'm a games writer who writes about games, who writes for games. Most recently, the big project that I was really proud of is that I wrote a story for Fantasy Flight Games Twilight Imperium expansion. And they released the story online, and I got paid. And just yesterday, or was it the day before? Like I said, I have a very difficult time keeping track of what day it is this week, just because of the filming. I which should also goes right. Sometimes I act in things, but very rarely. And yeah, just yesterday or the day before, I got an email from Fantasy Flight Games asking, yes, so where would you like us to send your free copy of the Twilight Imperium expansion? And I was like, to my house, please. Thank you.
Yes.
I'd love. My Board Game Geek profile is Sigma83, but I very rarely go to Board Game Geek anymore.
And the best place to find Colvin, for those who don't know, is Ophelia, which I'm flashing up there. Paul says, sorry, Bez, it needs to be clear, no matter what type of game it is, never assume anything. That's a fair point. I mean, I still think that, look, if there's... Let me look up the rules for Tickets Rides New York. I mean, just kind of wondering. Claim a route. To claim a route, you must discard the number of cards from your hand equal to the number of spaces. Yeah, it doesn't say what discarding means, but so you have to assume that because in Ticket to Ride there is only one discard pile for that style of card, it's clear that it goes there, and then later on it kind of says, oh, if you don't have enough cards.
I mean, there's ways to do it, right? Like you can, at the start of the rulebook, you can show a diagram. This is the discard pile. Whenever a player discards a card, it goes to this discard pile. So, so you don't have to say every time you write the words discard a card, say discard it to the central discard pile in the middle of the board. So.
I mean, look, I'm not saying that nothing's above reproach. I'm not saying, look, one company did it this way, therefore it's clearly brilliant, because as we all know, every company makes mistakes, no matter the size of the company. But I am saying that discard a card, if that type of card only has one discard pile, you don't need to...
Yeah, I agree. But have you told the players that there is a discard pile? Have you told the players that there is a discard pile for that type of card? Have you told the players where it is? Is it important where it is? Can it just be anywhere? Sometimes it's important, sometimes it's not.
But isn't this also a stylistic thing? Because looking through this rule sheet, I mean, I might be... Obviously, I'm doing this under pressure now, skimming it, trying to find a rule, but it doesn't say make space for a discard pile, or there is one discard pile. And this is a game, Ticket to Ride New York, which is aimed at being the more mass market Ticket to Ride. But even mass market players, I think, know what a discard pile is. And I'm going to make the assertion that, in my mind, there is a certain degree at which, if you over-explain, it can complicate things. You can have too much text. People can start.
So that's part of the art of rules editing, is where do you stop explaining? Because if you want, how do you balance precision and clarity? Right. I'm sure Paul knows this very, very well. So if you talk about, you want to make things absolutely clear, and you want to make sure there's no unwarranted assumptions that come in on the player's part, you're going to need 600 characters per thing, and you're like, it's a lot of characters, So if you want to do things like draw a card, So okay, we'll talk about draw a card, because I think that's easier. That's easier than this.
I just want to give a shout out and to say hi to Maya and hi to Alex Fanny Davis, Singh Yamata-kun, who basically just raided us with a party of 7. So thank you very much. It's lovely to see you. And I guess we're fighting. Yeah, we're talking about editing, writing, and we're talking about Colvin is the writer, and rules writing. And so thank you so much for joining us.
But I do want to respond to one thing. What are your reservations with Board Game Geek? I don't really have a problem with board game. Is that I only have so much time and energy in my life for, so many different things. So I just haven't been on board game recently. Maya says is there a common discard pile, or does each player have their own? We literally just talked about that. We've literally just talked about that. So like common discard pile versus individual discard pile. But it's a great question, right? It's okay. Discarding is more complicated than drawing. Let's talk about drawing a card, right? When you draw a card, so the thing about something like draw a card is that it's a lot easier because people play, normal 52 card games. They understand what draw a card means. But even saying that is an assumption that they grew up in a culture where 52 card games was common. Some cultures might not be. I don't know. I mean, my culture, Malaysian Chinese culture, definitely had a lot of 52 card games growing up. Hi, Michael. But I don't want to assume that that's true for every other culture, right? So when I say draw a card, obviously that is the common English parlance. I could, if I wanted to be more precise, and say, take the top card of this deck and place it in your hand. But, I think it doesn't really
even
matter.
There, you would have to say, well, for a normal game, you would have to say what the hand is. You would have to say place it so that you see the face of the card and everyone else sees the back. Keep your cards hidden. You're allowed to look at them.
Yes. So you have to explain all of this in such a way that the players understand that this is the case. So, like for example, the most common example that we have to use here is Hanabi. Hanabi, you draw a card, but you don't see the front. You only see the back. Right. So I haven't read the rules to Hanabi in a very long time, but I assume it would say something like, place the card in your hand such that it is facing outwards, and other people can see the face of the card, but you cannot. Things like that. And the thing is that if something as simple as drawing and discarding a card already leads us down so many rabbit holes of minutiae and trying to explain to the players in such a way that is absolutely true. Like, for example, when you draw a card, it's at the top. Does it have to be the top? Can it be the bottom? Can it be in the middle?
I mean, I've seen situations where I've said to someone, oh, take one of the cards from the deck. And I used to say that when I was teaching yogi, and then people would sometimes say, okay, and then they'd lift a bunch and take one from the middle. And then I started to actually specify, okay, just draw the top card of the deck. And then
But does it matter? Like for some games, it doesn't matter.
But it can mess the pile up. I mean, for a physical game where the pile might get easily messed up, it kind of does matter.
Yeah. But is it like I think the example of the Magic the Gathering is the Magic the Gathering rulebook, which is like hundreds of pages long. I agree with Valkyrie, by the way. You look great. I think the Magic the Gathering rulebook is like hundreds and hundreds of pages long and like completely boils down everything. It's like, how many cards can a player's deck have? None. But it's like there's no maximum, but it must be able to be randomized by them in a reasonable time frame. Like, yeah. Okay, so.
And that's the kind of thing that we need to explain what we mean, but we have to assume a certain degree of knowledge. We can't explain literally every single word in the simplest English, in the most common thousands words or whatever. We have to assume that people know what a deck is, for example, in this context.
You assume that you know what draw a card means, because if you're talking about, if let's say the game is a game about, like an art game, when you say draw a card, are you telling the audience to look at their boards and draw the card, right? So there's a lot of people in chat. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It's like we started off so quietly, and then Colvin came, and then everyone else came. So what I've learned is that, all the magic of you. So, yeah, just seeing if we had any big comments that we missed, other than all the egging. So Chris says, my first game rules were not written that well. Luckily, it was a pretty basic game, and the two glaring mistakes were easily explained to the community, and an FAQ was put to BGG and Facebook for the issues. I mean, that's kind of, sure, in this day and age, you can patch things in that way, but people are still going to be buying your game, and then they don't see, the latest thing. And editing, maybe when you're doing mass production, it's just a bit more important to. And so I don't think we really nailed down what is editing. Like,
editing is okay, because we got sidetracked, but editing is basically making sure that the rules are as clear as possible, as to make that they work, that the players can play the game from the rules. Yeah, we're talking about editing rules specifically. We're not talking about editing fiction or editing articles or anything like that. We could do that in the next show or whatever. But I figured since we have a board gaming audience, it would be a lot more interesting to them if we talked about rules editing. And then maybe next time I could talk about how I edit a review or how I edit a board game.
I mean, do you think that editing and development of a game are basically the same thing? And what it is basically, like, you've got this thing that is in some sense finished, but it's maybe not the best version of itself that it can be. But you've got all the elements, like all the content is there. You just need to make it even better.
Definitely, Paul can probably back me up on this, but almost definitely when you edit the rules, as in when you physically edit the rule book, you can change the way that the game is made. Because, for example, I worked on a rule book once, and the designer had created a step, and it said, in phase 3, I can't remember exactly how it goes. In phase 3, the players do X, Y, and Z. That was something the designer designed. And he had components for phase 3. He had a thing, a whole phase in the game. And I was like, I read the rule book, I played the game, and I asked him, do we need phase 3 actually? Why can't we just combine phase 3 into phase 2? Why does phase 3 need to be its own thing? It's more complicated. It adds components to the game. Why can't you just put it as an action that the players can do in phase 2 instead of having it be its own phase? And he was like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So by working on the rule book, I changed physically how the game was played. So as Paul said, it is venturing into development of the game, which you can do sometimes. If you're part of the process, if they let you. But technically speaking, if editing is just, hey, the game's going to print in 3 months, can we have the rule book done?
I mean, I think that there's this key aspect that to be good at one part, you need to be able to see the forest. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
If I am developing a game which maybe someone, there might be a job that I'm starting on, and I'll see if I can, once, I've gotten the contract, and I'll kind of tell everyone about it. I'm assuming the publisher wants me to talk about it, but anyway, the point is that the fact that I have a little bit of an understanding of, okay, the product design and how it will be marketed, it's all about knowing not just the rules of the game, but how it fits in. And maybe editing the writing is in the same sense. You need to not only understand what is this bit of writing that I'm editing, but also what's the purpose of this? What's the purpose of these steps that I'm telling people to do?
Yeah. I recently got hired for a project because I asked. It was a big project. It's like quite a lot of money. So I asked the person who hired me, what made you decide to go with me on this? Because it wasn't like an interview process. It wasn't like, hi Calvin, would you like to do this? We have several slots open and you're one of the candidates. It was just, hi Calvin, do you have time to do this? Because if so, you're hired. And I asked him, what was the criteria for you doing that? Because it's a tiny bit unusual. Maybe not in the board game industry, but generally. And he's like, well, okay. People who I know who are into writing, who are into board games, who are into writing about board games, and know a lot about both. And he said, by the time I got to number 3, you were the only person on the list. So So you got the jump.
So it feels like what Paul said is, look, I wasn't saying that development is part of editing. What I was saying was that development is analogous to editing. Like development is to design as editing is to writing. I guess that's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
Like it's
and because the rules are, the map is not the territory, but the rules are the game, basically, right? The rules of the game are the game. They're not the components, but they are how the game is played. You know, and editing the rule and changing the rules changes the game. So when you edit the rulebook, you have the capacity sometimes to change how the game is played. And often you want this to be in a positive direction. Something that is confusing becomes clear. Something that is ambiguous becomes precise, right? Something that is slow becomes fast. So when you do a rulebook, that is all the kinds of things that you want to take into account, right? And often, if I'm brought on early enough in the design process, as in the game design process, if I'm brought on early enough in the game design process, you can also make substantial or significant changes to how the game is played, such that it becomes easier and better for everyone. Right?
If I mean, someone in the chat, Alex, said without the rules, it's just a box of stuff, and I am going to agree with that. But I will also say that the components are the game just as much as the rules are. If Jenga was perfect cuboids, it would be totally different. You need the slightly different shapes to be able to make them come out. Obviously it matters a lot in dexterity games, and in Yogi, like some of the rules are on the cards. But even when it's like the arts, let's not dismiss the job that the arts does in creating that emotional experience.
Yeah.
But looking online, it says the definition of the verb to edit is, this is from Oxford Languages, to prepare for publication by correcting, condensing, or otherwise modifying it. So basically what it's saying is that this is the final step before publication. And I guess what we're saying is that you've written something and you want to tweak it. And I think that's as good a definition as we're going to get, unless you have some massive insight.
No, it seems about right. Because if you want to bring on somebody to edit the rulebook, at that point, the assumption is that the rulebook is done, or as close to done as you think it is.
And I think that's an important thing that you're saying. Like, you can't go to Paul and say, hey, here's some notes for my rules. Can you edit my rule sheet? You know, at that point, Paul is writing it or rewriting it, which might be a job that Paul might, or you might be up for doing, but like whoever's doing it, like, are they writing it? Are they editing it? It's like two different things. And I think what you said about having that second experience, like if it's you doing the writing, then ideally after you, there should be another person doing the editing for that fresh set of eyes. Would you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. And this it's not just for editing. I think it's for any and all creative stuff that is meant, you know, to take money from people. If it's free, it's fine, you know. Like if you just want to like I don't have anybody read my tweets, right? I've just, you know.
Yeah, Paul reminds me that I should reach out to Rachel Mortimer. I don't know if they are someone who's happy to speak publicly, but Rachel Mortimer is like a brilliant proofreader. If you need someone to proofread anything in English, I can 100% recommend Rachel Mortimer. Do you know them, Calvin?
Yeah, I've heard the name.
Okay, so let's get back to a couple of questions, if that's okay. Jim at one point had some interest. Okay, let's say you've had your game play tested and you receive lots of feedback. Just a general tips. How do you organize that feedback and implement it into the next version of playthroughs? What happens if you receive conflicting feedback from playtesters?
Okay, so I'm only going to answer this question as it pertains to the rulebook editing portion of it, because the rest of it is a very big general game design question. I guess I will say for the game design portion of it, if you receive conflicting feedback from players, you must have a vision, you must have a goal, right, for your game and for your rulebook too. You must have an idea in your firmly in your head of what your design vision is. Like, let's say, for example, if I'm making a game about growing trees, right, and I want the people to feel like they have ownership of this tree, and I want them to feel proud of it when it grows, and I receive a piece of feedback from a playtester saying, "Why can't this game be about chopping down trees? I like chopping down trees. That's not the game I'm trying to make, buddy. You know, like, this feedback is legitimate. It's true. Like, it's how they feel, but not the game you're making. Not the game I'm making." So, how does this go with the rulebook? Well, feedback on the rulebook is usually internally at first. It's from whoever's working on the game, and then once the game is released, a bunch of people go, "This rulebook is terrible," for example, right? And maybe even from yourself, like, you 6 months or a year later, the game comes out, you've improved since then, you read the rulebook, you're like, I would have done this differently. How do you implement feedback? If it aligns with your goals, right? If my goal is to make the rulebook clearer to understand, easier to read, explain the game better, then I'll implement the feedback. If it doesn't do those things, then I don't. So yeah, for me, feedback is all about, does it align with the goal that I have? If it does, then implement it. If it doesn't, then don't implement it, and thank them for their care and their time.
And I think it's brilliant what you've said about having this general focus, thinking who is the target audience, and from the context of a rule sheet, if some people are saying, hey, this rule sheet is too difficult to understand, I need more text here to clarify it. Someone else is saying, hey, this is too much text, please just put it into 5 words rather than 20. You've got to say, okay, who is actually my target audience? Is my target audience these gamers who already know what discarding a card means and already make these assumptions, or, already know how?
At some point, you do have to make sacrifices. Like, I know people say, like, oh, everyone should be able to play this game, but you are not going to be able to successfully get someone who has only played blackjack or hearts to be able to pick up Lisboa on their first go. And Lisboa has an amazing rulebook. I think it's very well done. I'm just looking at my shelf for the heaviest game there, and I saw Lisboa on it, and I'm like, you're not going to be able to get them on board there. And that's just, maybe it's unfortunate. Maybe we should be able to. Maybe we should think that maybe we should be aiming to be able to onboard anyone with it. I don't know. That's a difficult question. Michael says you need to strike a balance between use of language and the amount of space you have. Yes. Oh my God, yes. If you need to add like 3 more words and it opens you up into another 4-page spread, oh my God. Yep.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously pages are, unless it's just one sheet, which is 2 pages, it's normally in groups of 4. Yep, Dina, coming from it from a marketing perspective, I think it's really correct that it's all about having that, focus. Alex has an interesting question. Have you ever purposefully made a rule more difficult to understand? Is there room for that in a game?
I think a rule, no, but you can make a card like incredibly convoluted on purpose. But isn't the one you showed me, that magic card that was the counter, if you counter that counter, place a counter that counters the enemy counter.
Oh yeah, which was kind of done as a
joke
nod to how complicated things can be. And I was actually going to find also, we didn't playtest this at all, Legacies, which has a card that's called Don't Play This Card. And then if you play the card, the rules on it, basically you have to check the geographical longitude of every player, and compared to a relative, it's like about 7 steps. It's completely ridiculous, and it takes about 5 or 10 minutes to work out and execute this one card in a game that is itself about 5 or 10 minutes long. And then, yeah, it's
difficult to understand is different from opaque, which you can sometimes be intentionally opaque. I'll talk about 2 examples. One, Arkham Horror. Sorry, not Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror. Eldritch Horror has a system, I think I may have talked about this on the show before, where it says, for example, if you want to cast a spell, you do what it says on the front of the card, and then flip this card to receive the cost of casting, an Eldritch spell that summoned the Great Old One. What is the cost? No idea, right? You don't give the user the information that they need to make the choice, but it's thematic and it works because you're making a deal with the devil essentially, and you're not supposed to know what the effect of that is until you make the deal and turn the card over and do what it says on the back. But the text on the back should be clear and should be easy to understand what happens, right? You just don't know what it is. Second example that I can think of is Risk Legacy with the do not open ever envelope. So for those of you who don't know, Risk Legacy is a legacy game where that has a bunch of additional components that can come out during the course of the game. So for example, it says you open box A, and in box A is like a new thing, like maybe new rules that you can, stickers that you stick onto the rule book of the game to change how the game is played in the future. Sometimes it's stickers that you put on the board that change how, different aspects of the board play. And at the bottom of I'm not going to say what's in the envelope, but in the bottom of the box is an envelope that says do not open ever. And I mean, if you're a player and you discover a little envelope in your game that says do not open ever, you have a choice to make, right? What is in the do not open ever envelope? I'm not going to talk about what's in it. I happen to know what's in it, but I'm not going to say.
No, you can't know what's in it.
No, that's the point. And
no, I mean, it's impossible to know.
Yes, because you can't open it. The rules say you can't open it.
No.
No, I know what you're trying to say. I know what you're trying to say, but I know what the envelope contains. I know what you're trying to say, but we're not going to.
Okay.
We're not going to get into that for the purposes of our
So, for the purpose of this, apparently some people would rebel against it and immediately open it.
Mm-hmm. I've read some people burned it. They just burned the envelope because they didn't want to deal with what was inside. Because it says do not open. Okay, fine, we won't open. Yeah. So the thing is about that is the rule is incredibly clear. Do not open ever, right? But what happens when you open it is is an experience for the player. So it's a rule technically, but it's very clever, and I think it is a really cool player experience.
I mean, I think this is what Alex said, how like the way that the rules are written, like also in the writing of Risk Legacy, I think it's like what is done can never be undone, and then you've got to break that seal, and then you open the box. That's pretty powerful. Do you know what I mean? And Alex is talking about how a rule is written can change how you feel about the game. It does have emotional power. It does have connotations. And
yes.
Alex mentions they co-designed a game recently where we had a chance to simplify the scoring bonuses without impacting on the scoring too much, but the context of the rule made the choice feel less interesting.
Yeah. My favorite example of this is Agricola, aka Misery Farm. So at the end of Agricola, when you score, you lose, I think, is it 3 points for every category that you don't have an entry in. Like if you don't have a
I thought it was 1. Let me check.
Let's assume that it's 3. So you lose 3 points for every beggar card you have. You lose 3 points for every vegetable you don't have. You lose 3 points for every animal you don't have, and so on and so on and so on. This feels terrible. I hate it. You total up all your points, and then you minus. The thing is that it is mathematically equivalent, as in it is exactly the same result if you gave a player 3 points for every category that they did complete. And it has mathematically the same result and emotionally a completely different one, right? Because people will feel accomplished for completing a category rather than punished for not completing a category. I mean, yeah, let's just assume it's 3. It may as well be 3,000, you know, for how much you feel about it, you know, for how terrible it makes you feel. I hate Agricola. I think it's a very good game, but emotionally, I don't like it.
Yeah, I did actually just. It's 1. It's -3 for each begging card, but yeah, Paul says, yeah, the point is, like, you couldn't remember whether it was -1 or -3. The memory that lingers is that it's negative. That's the point. That's like the emotional fact that you, I need to lose points. What the?
Yeah. Paul, I'll be happy to let you know that I had exactly the same discussion with the publisher last month, and they changed it. It was used to be you lose 5 points if you don't do this thing, and I changed it to let everyone who completed it gain 5 points instead. And they were like, huh, yeah, the math works out to be exactly the same. So, but it's supposed to be punishing you. No, Michael, no.
Yes.
No.
It's like,
oh, it's not mathematically the same.
Calling it misery farm. It's about subsistence farming. It's about the agony of kind of trying to stay alive and grow your crops. I think that this was a good design choice.
No, I hate it. If you can argue all you want that it's good for the feeling of the game, but it is emotionally terrible.
Well, it depends what you want. If you want a light-hearted game, then it's terrible. If what you want is something that brings a little bit of the stress and misery of subsistence farming and that heart-wrenching agony, then, you know.
Yeah, I know. I respect Agricola. I think it's a good game. I just don't like it. You know, like that's sort of this the argument about games as art, right? Yeah.
Maya says it is not mathematically the same. It is similar.
And then she explains that 22 out of 25 is not the same as 25 out of 28. No, it's not. But if for the purposes of scoring the game, there's no effect, right? Like if everybody is scored identically, it's just whether it's a minus or a plus at the end.
So yeah, if it's 1 point for, if it's everyone loses 5 points except for the first person in first place, that is mathematically identical to everyone loses 0 points, but the person in first place gains 5. That is mathematically identical. As a ratio, it is not the same, but as a addition or subtraction, I think it is mathematically the same. Like, yeah, this is where it is mathematically the same. Anyway, for sure, when a lot of people play games, they want to be rewarding, and that's what it's about. But I just want to say, for example, sometimes you want to make people feel sad. I like Seize the Power, which I'm going to talk about on Sunday in a week's time with Tiz. And, you know, that's a game about bigotry and discrimination and subjugation of power. And I played it with, you know, Hadi from Helvetic. And then Hadi was saying, oh my God, like, I played this and I felt really terrible. I felt horrible. Like, everything was so unfair. And this is, and they said, like, that this was how a game about discrimination should be. Like,
should be. No, I agree. It shouldn't be fun. It should not be fun. So yeah.
And I guess it's a question of what do you want from this game? Do you want to have, and look, bigotry and discrimination is a more serious topic than subsistence farming. but the fact
in this
that
century, it is, yes.
like the fact that it still gives us a little bit of an emotional reaction. I'm just going to say, I still have a strong opinion that games can and should, talked about it with Michael for a couple of hours, how they should be able to, and people should embrace games that are a little bit about sad stuff, like tragedies.
Can you highlight Michael's newest comment? Can you highlight Michael's newest?
Can I highlight which one?
Michael's newest comment. Come on now, no one would actively choose to make a sad game. Shut up, Michael. No. I'm never buying Holding On. I'm never playing it. I can't take it. My heart would collapse. No. Bad
Okay.
Michael. Shall we do the live edit?
Yeah, let's do this. Oh wait, sorry.
Yeah, it's here. Okay. So this is how to play Hearts. This is the rulebook from the Bicycle Cards website. Okay, so we'll start with this. The first paragraph is part of the rules. Many trick-taking games are not directly related to bridge or whist. I'm already lost. This is a terrible introduction. If someone had handed me this
lots of knowledge.
Yes, it does, exactly. What is a trick-taking game? What is bridge? What is whist? Perhaps the foremost one is Hearts, which is truly one of the greatest card games ever devised for 4 players, each playing individually. I would not tell a publisher to write this at the start of their book. That is incredibly presumptuous. Here's our game. It is the best. Okay, I'm making fun now. Because this is a different assumption, right? Like this is an open source game
someone
that's been around for
presenting, a folk game.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It is a folk game. The pack, the standard 52 card pack is used. Okay, assumption here that people know what a standard 52 card pack is.
I mean, people are on bicyclecards.com. I mean, how did they get here? In what context are people reading this? Are they familiar with bicycle cards?
No, but I want to talk about if this was a rule book in a game that you bought and opened. That's the context that we're, right? In this case, you would say the deck that is included in the box is used. Okay.
Or use all the cards. Maybe it's just contents.
Okay, sure.
52 cards.
Object of the game. Now this part's fine. To be the player with the lowest score at the end of the game, where one player hits the agreed upon score higher, the game ends and the player with the lowest score wins. Now it doesn't say, but it does imply that you have to designate an agreed upon score, but it doesn't recommend what a score is.
Yeah, that kind of annoys me quite often. I mean, I found this with some old Flash games where there's a million permutations and they say, hey, it was actually just one Flash game where it was like actually a really deep thing where there's maybe literally 1,000 possibilities. It doesn't say, hey, here's your standard setup. It's like, okay, which one of these 10 fields would you like to play on? Which one of these 10 AIs would you like to play on? Would you like to have 2 AIs or 4 AIs? And it's like, what's best? Come on, give me some recommendation. Get me started.
Yeah, so
I don't know this game.
Here, I would say, like, for the first game, we recommend X points. For advanced, intermediate, or advanced gamers, we can recommend Y or Z points. Okay, so maybe that. Terrible intro. Yeah. Okay, hang on. We haven't even gotten to the actual rules portion yet. Okay, so card value, scoring. At the end of each hand, players count the number of hearts they have taken as well as the queen of spades. Okay, hang on. How did these cards get in my hand? Right?
I mean, I think they are assuming, especially with this bit, they are assuming that we have played trick-taking games before. This is not.
Yeah, I know. Again, we are assuming that this is a published board game. Okay, even a published board game, card values and scoring should never be here. It should be after setup. It should be after teaching people how to play the game. Unless knowing that the values and scoring is super important to understanding how to teach the game. But see, the deal should be above this, right? You should tell people how to set up your game to play it before telling them how to think. So because you've already got the object of the game. The object of the game is there, right? So you say you want to have the lowest score. Note that it doesn't tell you how to score, right? Oh, it does actually, the next part here. Okay. Each heart is 1 point. The queen is 13 points. The total aggregate of all scores for each hand must be a multiple of 26. Okay, they've lost me entirely. What is aggregate total? What is... Oh, okay. It says down here, the game is usually played to 100 points, some play to 50. Okay, fine. So that's the complaint that we had earlier addressed. When a player takes all 13 hearts and the queen of spades in one hand, instead of losing 26 points, the player scores 0 and each of his opponents scores an additional 26 points. Okay, so immediately my question is, why is it that the player with the lowest score? Why can't it be the highest score? This is so confusing. You're having to ask me to subtract instead of add, which is... This rulebook is terrible. I legitimately hate it. The deal. Deal the cards one at a time, face down clockwise in a 4-player game. Each is dealt 13 cards.
It's not asking you to subtract. It's each heart gives you 1 point. The queen gives you 13 points. It's just that looks like a
queen is minus 13 points. Okay, so that's why I thought if you have
it should be like a colon. A colon would be better, I think. Sure.
The deal. Deal the cards one at a time, face down clockwise. Doesn't say shuffle. Doesn't say shuffle. In a 4-player game, each is dealt 13 cards. In a 3-player game, the 2 of diamonds should be removed, and each player gets 17 cards. In a 5-player game, the 2 of diamonds and 2 of clubs should be removed, so that each player gets 10 cards. Okay, the rest of that's fine, but it doesn't say shuffle. I think it's very, very rude of them, to be honest. Yes, this is an assumption, right? They assume that you know what a 52-card pack is. You assume that they know to shuffle it. Adding context to the rules before you have to explain the mechanism in scoring has really helped my rules writing. Yes, yes. Players need to know what they're doing. You need to tell them you're in a farm. You're raising animals on a farm. You need to tell them, oh, we're trying to perform repairs on this vehicle, or you're trying to grow trees. Before you tell them, you score points for each tree that you have. Like what tree? I don't know anything about any tree. The player holding the 2 of clubs after the pass. What's the pass?
I genuinely don't know. I mean, as a player, I can make some assumptions, but I'd legitimately be guessing.
Yeah, makes the opening lead. What the hell is an opening lead? So this is my problem with a lot of these open source rulebooks, right? Like they make so many assumptions, and because that they are popular games, and because that they are games which a lot of people know, and maybe even a lot of game designers know and have played, they internalize a lot of these issues, right? So you tell people, deal, like this. The player holding the 2 of clubs after the pass makes the opening lead. I have no idea what the sentence means. Does it mean that the person holding the 2 of clubs after everyone has their cards is the first player to play a card? If the 2 has been removed for the 300 game, then the 3 of clubs is led. Led? Is that played? Each player must follow suit if possible. What the hell is this? This is a terrible rulebook. You need to explain what all these terms means, right? If you need, I wouldn't mind these 2 paragraphs if you had a paragraph before that, a couple of paragraphs before that, explaining in each round, each player will play in clockwise order, starting from the starting player, who is called the lead, right? Players must play a card, and then other players must play a card of the same suit, which is called following suit.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions, and I think you're right that with these sorts of open source games, where typically it is
cultural knowledge is assumed. Cultural knowledge is assumed.
Look, people get lazy, and with hobbyist board games, I'm going to say people get lazy as well. Like with deck building, most people watching this know what a deck builder is. If I say, oh yeah, you buy a card, you know what that means. If I'm teaching someone who hasn't played, what does that mean? I need to explain this bit in the middle is the markets. That by looking at this thing, once you, everything about it. And some of those things that other people might know, sure, you can use box outs, but
I actually read the Dominion rulebook recently because someone sent me a copy of Dominion Second Edition. It's a good rulebook. It's not bad. Like, it explains very clearly what needs to happen at every stage in the game. Like, it says, yeah, it's like listening to a mirror image of me. Yes. What does this mean? The Dominion rulebook explains very clearly. Like, for example, if it says, you know how when you run out of cards to draw, you need to shuffle your discard pile and make a new deck? It explains that very clearly. It says, and it's very specific. It says something like, if you need to draw a certain number of cards, but your draw pile does not contain enough of those cards, draw enough cards, as many cards until your draw pile is empty, then shuffle your discard pile to form a new draw pile, then draw until you have the required number of cards. It's very clear. For a mechanic which could potentially be quite confusing, I think the Dominion Second Edition, I've not read the First Edition rulebook, but the Second Edition rulebook is very good. So some parts of like what Maya said, I just changed some parts of my rulebook where I made assumptions and they were bad. Yeah, happens to everyone, don't worry. If a player is void of the suit led, okay, so why can't you just say, if a player does not have that suit in their hand, right? A card of any other suit may be discarded. Like, also, what is a suit? You haven't explained to your players what a suit is. Here it is. Draw a new hand of 5 cards. If your deck has fewer than 5 cards, first shuffle your discard pile and put it under your deck, then draw. Okay, so it's actually smarter than what I said. It's, you don't draw first, you make the new draw pile, then you draw. Yeah, that's very good. Okay.
Yeah, so we were talking about like follow suits. What does that mean? It means you need to play the same suit as the first suit that was played.
Oh yeah, what's the suit? What's a suit? No idea. It's never been defined.
If the player is void of the suit led, again, like there's a lot of, why not just say if a player doesn't have is probably okay, maybe it's like 2 characters longer, but it is so much more
human,
so much easier to understand.
Yeah. If a player has no clubs when the first trick is led, a heart or the queen of spades cannot be discarded. Why is this rule here? This is such an arcane rule, and there's a reason I hate all of these card games.
I mean, look,
the highest card of this.
I just wanted to make a quick tangent to say, you know, Bazik, and like there's loads of games where it's like, okay, actually in this game, 7 is the highest number, but then the ranks are like 7, 5, 4, 2, king, queen, jack, something like that, and it's like, why? And some people say, oh, the fact that it's in a weird order, it's part of the spirit of the game, and it makes such a difference. And sure, maybe once you've done it, like maybe remembering that is like, is this game basically about remembering weird information and overcoming that mental barrier? Because if that's what you're telling me, okay, maybe we should lean into that a bit more. But if it's not, like if it was just made because of cultural assumptions, and maybe it's just been grandfathered in, do you know what I mean? Like, I assume everyone understands that term, grandfathered in, where it makes no sense now, but it made sense, you know, 100 or 200 years ago. The way that certain things in Magic the Gathering, the fact that, yeah, maybe instant and sorcery, maybe it shouldn't be that way. Like Mark Rosewater has said, if they were redoing it right now, they would make instants a super type, so that it would be like instant sorcery or instant creature, and that means that all these things can happen instantly, which makes a bit more sense. But like all these things that maybe shouldn't be the way they are currently, and like the whole numbering system on some of these card games is ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, Paul says a message was that sentence was missing a however. Oh, it does say However,
No,
yeah.
I agree. No, I agree with not here, not here. He means the Dominion rulebook. Draw a new hand of 5 cards. However, if your deck has fewer than 5 cards, yeah.
So you can literally, that would be 1, draw cards. Don't forget to roll. If it's a yeah. Oh yeah, that's yeah, do cribbage. Yeah, cribbage is like the whole pegging is pointless. I mean, I just do tallies, come on. But yeah, this whole thing. However, if a player has no clubs when the first trick is led, a heart or the queen of spades cannot be discarded. Okay, I kind of. It's basically saying that you shouldn't be able to get rid of it that easily. I understand what it feels like a kludge for, like a band-aid in game design. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, the highest card of the suit led wins a trick. And we've still not talked about what suit led means, have we? The winner of that trick leads next. There is no trump suit. What does trump suit mean? It says, I mean, this kind of should be a box out. Hey, if you've played previous trick-taking games with a trump suit, this game doesn't have one. And like for someone who isn't familiar with trick-taking games, it's like this entire sentence, if this was a standalone game, just should not be here.
The winner of the trick collects it and places it face down. The hell does that mean? You know, I know it means that you take all the cards that were played in the trick, arrange it and place it face down, right? Hearts may not be led until a heart or the queen of spades has been discarded. The queen does not have to be discarded at the first opportunity. Bye. Here, the queen can be led at any time. Oh my god. I hate this so much. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It genuinely makes me angry. Because if you're trying to teach someone this cool new game that you love, you either have to do it in person, right? Or, you know, I don't know. I get very passionate about these kinds of things. Yeah, that was our live read through of Hearts, and a little bit of how I would change it. I would go in deeper, but I actually do not know how to play Hearts, and this rulebook has left me no wiser.
Had you read this before reading it right now, or was this?
Yes, I did. It made me angry, and I knew it was perfect to bring up to the
show. So you knew that you were going to get angry. Okay, fair enough. I mean,
I didn't know it would be this bad because I just skimmed it, right? I just skimmed it. I was like, oh, this is terrible. This terrible rulebook. Let's use it. But I didn't realize I would actually get this annoyed.
Look, let's not make this an entire show about this. I mean, we could potentially do that another time, but let's talk about like just why we want editing. I mean, ultimately, I think we've got an example that we want to have someone who says, hey, this doesn't make sense. It's the extra sets of eyes, and just your rules are what teaches the people how to play. Because if they aren't playing by the correct rules, they're not playing the game. And so those rules are massively important. Yeah, anything to add, Colvin?
No. Everything we've said, we already said. We know the rules need to be clear. It needs to help. Paul was also getting angry. Yeah, we say it's passion, but maybe it's unresolved trauma. No, I just the reason I got mad.
Paul has better eyebrows, but you have better side glances.
He does have better eyebrows. It's hard to have better eyebrows than Paul. Although you also have quite glorious face.
Bye, Rowan. Lovely to see you. And yeah, how do you work with examples and graphics? Do you comment on those when you edit?
Sometimes I say, this needs to be a graphic. This needs to be an example. Yeah, and I do comment on them. If I say like this graphic is not clear where the discard pile is, or this example does not do an edge case. Is this the best example of an edge case that you can get in your example? You know, because sometimes there's multiple examples, right? Example 1 is a very basic one. And example 2 is a slightly more complicated one. And example 3 is an extreme edge case, which should happen in like 1 in 100 games, but you want it in there so that it can be clarified. Chris, I'm so sorry about your internet.
Oh,
that sucks.
That really does suck. Let's solve what part?
Can we try and do like heart hands across the border? Oh my god, this is so difficult.
Yep.
Oh my god, somebody screenshot this. This is so hard. Somebody screenshot this.
Okay, move yours a little bit closer, gets it to the bottom. Oh, there we go. That's shout out to Chris.
Shout out to Chris.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what can go wrong, because obviously this was a fairly extreme example, and we've talked about how a lot of folk games assume knowledge. There, Paul mentioned this one, Dominion, that is missing a however, because if
this is like really,
instead, I would say however is probably the clearest word. I like that.
I agree with Paul. Paul's been doing this a lot longer than I have, so he'll have more deeply specific insights. My my knowledge is like a more general thing. I wouldn't have thought of the however when reading that, so obviously Paul is correct. It's just a matter of how do you avoid ambiguities, really? How do you just make sure that people are playing the game correctly the first time? I'm a big fan of commonly overlooked rules. I'm a big fan of, on the back of the rulebook, like a reference guide for the important things. I'm a big fan of not having rules in the rulebook. Having rules on cards, having rules on reference sheets, having rules on player boards. You talk about them in the rulebook, definitely, but I don't think a player should be like rushing to pick up the rulebook every time they want to know, like, how do I play phase 2, right? It should be on their player boards, or it should be on the main board, or it should be on the card somewhere that they can look at and go, yeah, okay, that's phase 2. Link to FAQ in rulebook, yes or no? Yes.
Well, should you already set up an FAQ before you even put out really?
Yes, I think so. If you assume that there's going to be one, you can. I think so. Yeah.
And when should you assume that there's going to be an FAQ?
If the rules are complex enough that you think there might be edge cases, then yeah. If it's a very simple game, like I don't think checkers needs an FAQ, for example.
I mean, would you say that? I mean, you've not played all of my games, but I mean, something like Kitty Cataclysm, it feels like, okay, having an FAQ for that, it's a bit like, why?
Yeah. Some games don't need one. But usually this is more common in games with unique components like cards. Like, for example, if I play the card that says all of my units move 1 space, and you play a card that says your opponent cannot move units this turn, and it may not be clear. I mean, ideally, you should try and resolve that during the design phase. And actually, this is one thing that I really love about FFG's rulebooks. At the start of the rulebook, they say these are the golden rules. Like 1, text on the card. If the text on the card and the text of a rulebook contravene each other, the text on the card takes precedence. So the rulebook says you can only move units during phase 2, but the card says you can move your units during any phase. Thunder, stop that. Sorry, my housemate's dog is attempting to get the garbage again. Yeah. And the other golden rules are things like when we refer to, yeah, there you go. The text of this rule reference already contradicts the text of the learn to play with the text of the rules reference takes precedence if the text of the card directly contradicts the text of the other rules reference or learn to play with. The text of the card takes precedence. Which game is this? This is Netrunner. Yeah.
This is what you kind of need for a CC, well, for not a CCG, a living cards game, a CCG, any game where the cards do break the rules. And not every game does this, obviously. But it works really well at setting the expectations of what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
there's also one that FFG uses recently, which is whenever they refer to, I think it is, I can't remember, maybe I'm misremembering, but if you refer to the player, I think it's any gender. I think the word "they" is singular in this rulebook and refers to any gender of player. I'm pretty sure that's an FFG. It's an FFG golden rule.
Michael says there will always be outliers to cover or points that need to be emphasized. So I'm a big fan of FAQs from day one.
Sometimes, like I said, you can even have an FAQ in the rulebook itself, like, frequently overlooked rules, frequently asked components.
Again, like, I think it depends on the game. Like,
it does, yeah, it does.
I mean, when someone says always, I'm going to challenge that. I mean, I've never, like, yeah, there's no point in having an FAQ for Yogi, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, your titles are kind of slightly more complex than. Yeah, that's the thing. It is all about the bigger thing.
If it's a bigger game with more components and more rules, and therefore more edge cases and more possible points of contradiction, then yes.
So quickly running through, are there any pitfalls that you can say this is something really bad in editing a rule book? If you don't do it.
Assumptions. Try and always interrogate your assumptions. The example I always love to use is place the board in the center of the table. You're assuming that the players have a table. Place the board within easy reach of all players, I think, is a more universal way of doing it. We also talked about things like, remember the other day we had like this discussion about first player rules? And how, yeah, like sometimes first player rules make people feel bad. For example, the first player is the player who most recently traveled to another country. What if you can't afford to travel to another country and you've had your passport destroyed by your government? So having little things like that in a rulebook that has absolutely no upside, that in a way that can't be replicated by a different thing. If questions came up during playtesting, they should be included in FAQ in the back of the rulebook with a link to a website to others. Yeah, I think I agree with Paul. Yeah.
Have a good stream, Michael. I hope it goes well. Thank you for dropping by.
Right, because it's Michael.
Look at the final questions. Make sure we've addressed them all. We did see the live edit. Why is editing required? I think we had a great example of that. What is the difference between editing and writing? I mean, we've not, neither of us know, apparently. It's a blurry line. Maybe the writing is the first draft and editing is everything that comes after?
Yeah. Are the skills the same? Similar, very similar. Because if you can explain something well, it doesn't need to be edited. If it needs to be edited, then it wasn't explained well.
Okay, and let's thank you very much, everyone. Let's start to recap and wrap everything up. We've talked about so much. We talked about, before you came, Michael, I talked about Ticket to Ride London and eating fish and chips, and I showed some things that I had drawn. We talked about chaos, about doing good stuff, about having an exciting life, that you should edit your own stuff, but you shouldn't be the final editor of it. We talked about Paul being lovely and fabulous, and Paul is being cagey about their favorite thing, but we might find out when Paul comes onto this live stream, about making assumptions. Do people know what discarding means? Do people know how to draw a card? Making sure the rules are as clear as possible. is the content already there? Like sometimes the content might not be there. Sometimes, you know, an editor might have to reach out to the designer and say, hey, this thing is just not clear at all. You need to actually write more content. So imagine if that Hearts had been a new game. Who's your target audience? Put it in focus. That's such a good thing. Like, where are you going to have box outs? What information are you going to explain? Are you going to explain draw? Are you going to explain shuffle? Are you going to explain what a market means? Because in some games, if you say this is a market, that's fine. In another game, it might be this is a market. This is where you're going to be buying things from. Because, and it's good because it's about the simplification, making things more accessible. You talked about having rules, not just in the rule sheet, but also on player boards, on the main board, about on the cards, about using diagrams, and never make assumptions based on the players. Do you have anything left to add to that?
Of course, I'll be right back.
I guess that Colvin has something that they want to add in a minute. Dina says that's in their job in book publishing. Oh wow, we've not talked much about your work in book publishing. We should totally talk about that sometime. Writing is the art, and editing is polishing. Art here being sentence structure and base formatting. I assumed that it was, yeah, so maybe Colvin have something left to add. I'm just going to say that if you want to find me, I'm stuffbez.com, stuffbez.bigcartel.com, twitter.com/stuffbez is where I share a lot, instagram.com/stuffbez is my best pictures, twitch.tv/stuffbez for streaming, facebook.com/thingsbybez is the thing, stuffbez@gmail.com is my email, and if you want to find Colvin, then this is their Twitter, Ethalia.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's the thing. Check it out, and I will put that into. It's already on the YouTube, Facebook, and I will paste that in the Twitter. And yeah, did you say that you had something to add at the end? Oops. Well. Now, for this final section, over to you. Only if you want to share what you're up to. Is there anything that you want to share? Something that you're looking forward to? Hopes or ambitions? Share anything, whether it's exciting or trivial, important or just fun. Whether it's something you're hoping to have done. I am... Yeah, I'm looking forward to... I think I'm speaking to Needy Cat Games in a wee bit. We're going to be recording a podcast where they're doing this lovely podcast called First Games or First Turns. It's about how people got into gaming. The recent shows have included Anna Maria Jackson Phelps and Victoria Khan from Wizards. Anyway, that's something lovely. I'm looking forward to also chatting with Isaac Shalev later this afternoon about a game that we're both working on. Paul's meeting with a client. I hope you have a wonderful day. Lots of love to you. The Twitter isn't... Do the reading. Oh, man. I'm really sorry, Dina. Again, you know. Man, that's a shame. Oh, but they got asked to run a tournament for their Kickstarter campaign. So that's cool. Awesome. Do you have anything that you would like to share, Colvin?
I mean, free copy of the Twilight Imperium expansion. I recently got a coupon in the mail for $10 on the Oculus store. So I bought a new music pack for Beat Saber. It's the soundtrack for Rocket League, which is a game that I've not played. I haven't played Rocket League. I will be terrible at Rocket League. I will probably never play it, but I'm very good at Beat Saber. So I will play the soundtrack to Rocket League in Beat Saber.
Sounds awesome.
That's how we refer to Beat Saber in this house. We don't say the words Beat Saber. We say that's
Xate sold 1.5 new masks during stream today. That is indeed something to congratulate you on. Indeed, well done. And Chris says that Chris says Paul's favourite thing is getting into a bar full of baked beans, and Paul did not respond, so that's confirmation. So, yeah, that is us. I want to say, I've not got the. I want to say, yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who's been watching along. Thank you. Yeah, special thanks to Jim, who signed up to Twitch just to watch me. That was amazing of you. Special thanks to, yeah, there's so many people to thank. Michael and Jeroen and Dina and Xate and Paul and lovely, lovely people and Chris. And I just want to say thank you, and Maya and Jay Foolsguard and yeah, lovely people. And yeah, we might, if you've enjoyed this, share, spread the word. I'm having a Bez and Game Day on Saturday, the 17th of October. And for my next streams, look at stuffbybez.com/streams, which will tell you that tomorrow I am chatting to Jonathan Philip Chambers. John Chambers is from South Australia, working on a hitherto unpublished game, and they decided that they weren't getting enough playtesters, and playtesters weren't taking testing seriously, so let's run a tournament with a cash prize and do that as a way of testing their game. So I'm going to be talking about them, talking to them about how that went and about the nature of running a tournament, because there's quite a lot to think about there. Then over the weekend, designing with partner, respecting sensitive topics on Sunday, and then got an exciting week. The following week, let's raid Michael, if Michael is already up, because why not?
That's right.
Feels appropriate. Is there anything else that anyone else wants to say? Colvin? Okay. Well, all that we have left to do, hey, idle Michael. Hashtag raid idle Mikael. Okay, so the one thing left to do is to say bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Are you still there, Colvin?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye.